The sea contains secrets that sleep for decades. In 1944, a single German U-boat vanished beneath the sea and was never heard from again. 50 men disappeared, families with unanswered questions, and the Navy with nothing. For 66 years, there was nothing, until divers chanced to cross a deformed mast deep within the Bay of Genoa. Half submerged in mud, its bow lifted in a final desperate gasp. It was U-455. What occurred during those final hours? Enemy attack, mine, or the treachery of the waters they trusted? This is the haunting, tragic tale of U-455. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Few weapons filled as much fear on open waters during the Second World War as the German U-boats. Nicknamed the Grey Wolves, these subs were glorified in Nazi propaganda as the silent predators of the seas, stalking Allied convoys with merciless stealth. They were romanticized as symbols of German invulnerability, gliding through the waves undetected, attacking with torpedoes, and disappearing before vengeance could catch up to them. For the Allies, the mere mention of U-boats evoked pictures of blazing cargo vessels, frantic sailors hanging on to lifeboats, and whole convoys shattered in the darkness. But behind the propaganda, things were far less glamorous for the men on a U-boat. They were frequently referred to as an elite crew, but what that truly described was endurance, the capacity to survive conditions most others would find intolerable. A typical Type 7C submarine, such as the one later to be designated U-455, accommodated some 50 men. Fitted into a steel tube a little more than 220 feet in length, these men existed for weeks under a world of darkness, sounds of perpetually idling engines, and the odor of oil, diesel fuel, perspiration, and uncleaned garments. Fresh water was rare, sometimes used for cooking or equipment, so men went unshaved for whole missions. There was no privacy, shared bunks were rotated, and meals were taken alongside torpedoes used as storage shelves. Every mission had a combination of cold-blooded quiet and momentary horror. Hours might slip by with only the whir of machinery and the soft-spoken words, until unexpectedly the sonar caught the distinctive pings of Allied destroyers searching overhead. Then the submarine would dive deeper, air hotter, the moisture dripping off steel walls, while men breathed in their lungs. Every detonation rattled the submarine like a tin can, and crews wondered if the next one would blow the hull apart. The psychological pressure was overwhelming. But these guys were always assured they were Germany's best fighters, fighters who tread the deep rather than battle on the surface, striking into the very heart of their foes. During those early years of the war, reputation seemed to be earned. U-boats devastated shipping lanes in the Atlantic, putting British industry in immense pressure by bringing food, fuel, and ammunition supplies into jeopardy. Hitler described it as the trump card, the weapon that would get the Allies on their knees. The crews overnight became heroes of the newsreels, and their captains were awarded as national heroes. Born with the world full of dangers was U-455, a Type 7C submarine commissioned in 1941. Initially dispatched north, it cruised Norway's frigid waters in search of Allied vessels. The initial assignments were largely in vain, weeks spent in cramped confinement buying nothing but acrid frustration. U-455 was later sent to the Atlantic, where it claimed 2 victories, the sinking of the British workman and a second merchant ship. Victory treated the crew to the flavor of victory and convinced them that they were predators, not prey. U-455 and its crew bore the pride of hunters who had spilled blood in a vast ocean of enemy territory for a while. The war was changing, however. With advances in radar, sonar, long-range planes, and depth charges, the oceans by 1943 became kill grounds for the U-boats. The hunters had turned into the hunted, and countless submarines never returned. Crews vanished into the vast watery expanse with their ends never known. This was the world in which U-455 set sail, a combination of pride and danger, of propaganda and fact. It was soon to be dispatched on one of the war's most perilous missions, slipping into the Mediterranean via the lethal Strait of Gibraltar. By January 1944, the war had turned very decisively. The Allies were pushing harder in the Mediterranean, encroaching on North Africa and Italy. For the German Navy, the area was now vital, and all available submarines were instructed to interfere with Allied supplies. One of those selected was U-455. Its assignment was easy to write about but dangerous to execute: go into the Mediterranean and hunt Allied convoys off the Italian shore. To get there, however, the crew would have to travel through one of the world's most hazardous bodies of water, the Strait of Gibraltar. The strait was not just a choke point, it was a fortress. Narrowly only 9 miles in width, it was defended day and night by Allied patrols, aircraft, radar, and minefields. For a submarine, it was threading a blindfolded needle while hunted. Some who tried never made it back, their resting places identified only by oil slicks upon the surface. For U-455, this transit meant everything. Without it, they were not able to reach their patrol area. Success would lead to open doors to new targets. Defeat was death in a steel coffin, ripped asunder by depth charges or entangled in nets meant to capture submarines. As the sun dipped below the horizon in January, U-455 readied. Crews sealed hatches, tested engines, and dove. Lights were extinguished, whispers substituted for speech, and each man knew what hung in the balance. For the next 40 hours, discipline and silence would determine their destiny. They counted not only on machines but on nature itself. Atlantic currents churned through the strait, and Commander Hans-Heinrich Giesler intended to use them for cover. U-455 crept over the seabed, inch by inch, as the men within sweated, choked in hot air, and heard sonar pings like death tapping on their steel walls. Each clang, each creak a potential end. Destroyers from the Allies cruised overhead, their sonar men listening, their depth charges poised. Planes orbited, searchlights swept, waiting for the slightest hint. To the sailors, it seemed like swimming under a knife ceiling. For close to 2 days, U-455 withstood the crucible. The air thickened, food was short, nerves were raw. But at last, after 40 hours of tension, they broke into the Mediterranean. Against impossible odds, they had made it through. But their luck would not hold. Within a short time, U-455's mission would be its last one. Coming out of Gibraltar must have been rebirth for the crew. They had done the impossible, slipping through Allied defenses. Surely the toughest part was over. Now their mission lay in wait, disrupt Allied shipping off Italy's coast. But the crossing had only brought them into another trap. Within weeks, U-455 would be gone without a trace, and its final message would be the start of silence. Following the clearing of Gibraltar in late January 1944, U-455 was ordered to operate in the Ligurian and Tyrrhenian seas and attack supply lines to the Allied advance in Italy. Each food convoy, fuel convoy, and ammunition convoy was essential, and the Germans were counting on U-boats to stem the tide. For U-455, this involved hanging off Italy's west coast, attacking whenever opportunity allowed, then falling back into cover. But those cover areas were diminishing. By 1944, the Mediterranean was no longer a hunting ground. Allied aircraft ruled the air, destroyers patrolled the seas, and minefields clogged large areas. It was no longer a matter of opportunity, but of graveyard. The last verified transmission from U-455 was prosaic, reporting patrol orders. Nothing in it indicated that anything was amiss. But then nothing more. No distress signal, no subsequent reports. It seemed that U-455 had melted into the ocean. Months passed as weeks. At last, the Kriegsmarine declared U-455 missing. Letters written in heavy official language but devoid of answers informed families. Sons, brothers, and husbands had just disappeared. To the Navy, it was a number amongst many. To families, it was an open wound, no body, no grave, no why. Rumors started. Some assumed U-455 hit German-laid mines, others that Allied planes or destroyers intercepted and sank her. Others proposed a mechanical failure, an explosion from within. But with no wreckage, such was speculative. For years, the fate of U-455 tormented historians and veterans. The silence was not only military, but also personal. Families endured absence. Survivors of U-boat duty talked about the odd connections between crews, steel and danger-forged connections. 2 men had even served on U-455 but had been reassigned before its final mission. They carried the guilt of knowing exactly who had been on board, and that fortune's twist had left them behind. Then, decades later, divers looking on the seabed discovered a shape in the mud, its bow up like a last gasp. Finally, some of the truth of U-455 broke the silence of the deep.